Hey everyone, it's been quite some time since I've talked about flat earthers, even if they never stop talking about me. But although the self-proclaimed champions of flat earth change over time, most of their brainwashed flock still seem to bring up one particular guy as their messiah, and that's Eric Dubay. If you're not familiar with this buffoon, he's a pointless grifter and yoga teacher who took a garbage 19th century book by Sam Robotham called Zetetic Astronomy, Earth Not a Globe, and shamelessly repackaged it for today's gullible masses with some crappy pamphlets and YouTube videos collectively entitled 200 Proofs Earth is Not a Spinning Ball. Despite having been debunked countless times, flat earthers somehow still reference this tool, so I thought it would be fun to go through all 200 of his so-called proofs and show how profoundly stupid they really are. Wouldn't that be fun? Now, in order to do this, showing clips from his videos would take way too long. Instead, I've downloaded his ridiculous ebook so I can simply show the text for each proof, quickly summarize, and then debunk it. That will keep the runtime down to something mildly reasonable, and then we also don't have to listen to his annoying voice. Although, if you're curious, this is what he sounds like.
And welcome back to Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes.
And this guy has followers. What a world. Anyway, let's get started. 1. The horizon is always flat. Any footage shows it to be flat, except for all the footage that shows it isn't flat, which of course is CGI, because he says so. In reality, all sufficiently high altitude footage shows the curvature of the horizon, whether it's the 24/7 live feed from the ISS, amateur weather balloon footage, or anything else, much of which entirely predates the existence of CGI. Once you get really high, you see it. Always. So this is a lie. Gee, do you think a lot of these will just be lies? Let's find out. 2. The horizon always rises to eye level. No matter how high you go, the horizon is always in the same place in your field of vision. Another lie. Enjoy these pictures that show the horizon below eye level, proving that this is a dumb lie. 3. Crazy water stuff. This is where flat earthers get their dumb catchphrase, water always finds its level. First, he has no clue what level means. It doesn't mean flat. It means perpendicular to the vector representing acceleration due to gravity, which points to the center of the Earth. Gravity is pulling everything to the center of the Earth, so level means perpendicular to that force, which essentially means any tangent line with respect to any point on Earth's surface. Oceans are level, even though they exhibit curvature, and this is how all the water molecules sit as close to the center of the Earth as geometrically possible. And second, his fantasy flat oceans can't even exist on his imaginary pizza land anyway. Tides are a thing. In his world, tides are just little hills of water moving around by magic. No flat water, even for Eric. Whoops. 4. Rivers only flow downhill. Yeah, including the Mississippi, which starts in Minnesota at an elevation of 1,475 feet and flows downhill the entire time all the way to the Gulf of Mexico at sea level. He just pulls this 11 miles thing out of his ass and doesn't even specify what he's talking about. 5. More with rivers, or really just more gibberish. If the Nile were to flow 1,000 miles with an elevation change of 1 foot, then it would do that no matter what the shape of the Earth. This is not an argument. No rivers flow uphill. He's just lying. He could cite specific locations and elevations, but he doesn't do that because he made it up. 6. More water gibberish. Again, he doesn't know what level means. It doesn't mean flat. Water molecules are not magic. They get pulled to the center of the Earth by gravity just like everything else. Oceans exhibit curvature and are level. 7. Trains. He is pretending that train tracks can't handle even a millimeter of curvature. In reality, train tracks go over hills and mountains and run through valleys and conform to local geographical features that exhibit thousands of times more curvature than the curvature of the Earth. So he's a moron who's never actually seen train tracks. Also, bridges are specifically built taking into account Earth's curvature. Long suspension bridges have towers that are not precisely parallel, and they are built knowing that they can't be precisely parallel because of Earth's curvature. Ask people who build bridges. 8. The Suez Canal. Again, he's pretending that large bodies of water are flat because he doesn't understand what elevation means. Boats go from one body of water to another, and all the water is level throughout. There's nothing parallel to anything, and there's nothing to talk about here. 9. Some engineer guy said a thing. It's a long quote that starts with zero context as to what he's referring to, pivots to train tracks and canals, which we just talked about, and specifies that train tracks don't have to account for Earth's curvature, which is utterly insignificant on the local scale, dramatically outweighed by local topographical features. Also, I can't find any evidence whatsoever of an engineer by this name ever having existed. 10. More trains. Random numbers with no math shown and continuing to pretend that train tracks can't handle anything other than flawlessly flat terrain. 11. Another fake engineer quote. You can tell because he's as dumb as a flat earther. Trains can only run on totally flat surfaces. Except, of course, for the not at all flat surfaces, like the inclines they traverse literally all the time. But very carefully, of course, as though the train has to tiptoe on those parts. And 8 inches over 1 mile is ridiculous. Impossible. Who could imagine such a thing? Insanity. 12. Wow, he's really sticking with the train thing and pretending these are somehow all separate proofs. Yeah, people who lay out train tracks don't think about the curvature of the Earth because it's negligible and completely dwarfed by local topographical features. I'm already repeating myself for a 3rd time, and we are only on number 12. Unreal. 13. We see too far. A deliberately vague description of a light on the summit of something, but we don't know what, somewhere in Spain, which was seen from what I can only assume he means is the island of Ibiza, specifically a place called Campri, which doesn't exist. He pretends the elevation is the same even though he mentioned the summit of something but didn't say what. He lies about the distance, he lies about the amount of curvature, and of course this is anecdotal and probably made up anyway, since I find no mention of this experiment anywhere on the internet, including Arago's Wikipedia page, which is lengthy. 14. Another See Too Far, which of course is a fabricated event that offers zero specific information, lies about the width of the channel, and the amount of curvature there should be. Are you noticing a pattern yet? 15. Airplanes. Yes, that's right. Planes should magically be able to fly to outer space just by going in a straight line. That's exactly how physics works. You totally don't need to expend energy to counteract gravity. Throw a ball straight up into the air. That should go all the way up into space too. This is one of the absolute dumbest things flat earthers say because it's just them having no clue how planes work. When a plane is flying, gravity is pulling it down, but there is lift pushing the plane up due to air hitting the underside of the body and wings, which are specifically designed to maximize lift and keep it in the air. When these forces are equal, you have level flight, meaning constant altitude, and altitude conforms to the curvature of the Earth. As the plane flies level, it follows the curvature of the Earth. A toddler could understand this. It can't magically ascend in elevation against gravity without exerting additional thrust. Also, has he ever seen a plane land? Does a plane land with its nose dipped down to get down to the runway? No, the nose points up as the plane slows down. The guy really is dumber than rocks. 16. Ares failure. He has no clue what this means. Somebody was trying to substantiate the existence of the ether, which doesn't exist, so he failed to detect it. He wasn't trying to prove the heliocentric theory. That was done several centuries prior. This is gibberish. 17. Olber's paradox. No, this isn't what he said at all. The paradox addresses the assertion that the universe is infinite, eternal, and static. If that were the case, and there were infinite stars in every direction, the sky would be completely lit. Modern cosmology proposes none of those things. Billions of stars may sound like a lot, but it's not the same as infinite stars. He can't be bothered to Google the term and learn what it means, and he's too stupid to even read the quote properly, since Poe clearly uses the word endless, which means infinite. 18. Michelson-Morley, another thing that can easily be Googled to learn what it is and which he will never do. They also were trying to substantiate the existence of the ether, which it turns out does not exist. Yes, they determined that the speed of light never changes, a finding which prompted the development of special relativity. None of this has anything to do with the shape of the Earth or arrangement of the solar system, at all. 19. Tycho Brahe. It's true, he was not convinced of heliocentrism, and his reason was logical. He knew that stars should exhibit parallax, and they do. You need telescopes to see it, which didn't exist when Brahe was alive. It was first confirmed in 1838, and now you can confirm the parallax of nearby stars even with higher-end personal telescopes, which is why this idiot has to time travel to when telescopes didn't exist in order to pretend you can't. 20. Fun with physics. If you fire a cannonball straight up, it should fall down in a different place because the Earth is spinning. No. There's this thing called conservation of momentum. The cannonball retains the momentum of the Earth. This is also why a skateboarder lands right back on the skateboard when they jump in the air for a trick. They travel forward with the skateboard, even though from their reference frame they are jumping straight up and falling straight down. Same with the cannonball. 21. Same stupidity, but switch cannons for helicopters and balloons. These objects don't magically lose the momentum of Earth's rotation simply by hovering, for the same reason that jumping inside a plane doesn't cause you to fly to the back of the cabin at 500 miles per hour. And no, it's not because the cabin is enclosed. Observe people playing tennis on the wings of an airplane. Physics. Learn about it. 22. More of the same stupid. The guy was falling and landed in the wrong place. Well, again, the balloon he was on was rotating with the Earth, and he maintained that lateral velocity as he fell. Ever see planes dropping bombs? Do they fall directly downward and land on the point precisely below where the plane was when it opened the hatch? No, the bombs maintain the velocity of the plane, so they travel forward with the plane as they fall. That's why they have to perform calculations and know exactly when to release them in order to hit the target. And also, the Earth doesn't rotate at 1,000 miles an hour. Rotational motion is different from linear motion. It rotates once per day. He uses a tangential linear velocity to make it sound unreasonable. In reality, it's rotating half as fast as the hour hand on a clock. 23. Gravity is magic. Yes, the Earth holds on to the atmosphere by gravity, just like all other matter. Yes, the atmosphere rotates along with the Earth. No, there is no perfect synchronization. The rest is gibberish. There is gravity in space. Things in orbit are still under the influence of Earth's gravity. Gravitized doesn't mean anything, and he doesn't know what a vacuum is. No, basic scientific facts are not refuted by the existence of any of the random objects he is listing. He's just dumb and doesn't understand basic physics. 24. More fun with cannonballs. Yes, we can consider the Earth an inertial reference frame, so it doesn't matter which way the cannon is facing. It's not that hard to understand. 25. More plane stuff. Pretending that planes can't travel east because the Earth is rotating below them is like pretending you can't jump forwards on the bed of a truck because the second your feet leave the truck, it will fly away from under you at 70 miles an hour, since humans can't jump forward at 70 miles an hour. The plane has the velocity that the Earth has. When it takes off from the Earth, the activity of the plane will produce a motion relative to Earth's surface. Reference frames. Learn about them. 26. Pointless quote. I don't know who this person is, but Googling her name brings up nothing but links to flat Earth videos and pamphlets, so it seems pretty fake. Also, pointing to someone else who is stupid doesn't make you any less stupid. Copernicus wasn't arguing that the Earth is a rotating sphere because that had been common knowledge for well over 1,000 years at that point, so 26 is basically 25 again, but out of someone else's fake dumb mouth. 27. Holy hell, more plane stuff. No to all of this for the same reasons. 28. Clouds are weird. Clouds can't do what they do. Why? Because you say so? That's not convincing. Argument from incredulity rejected. 29. Crazy fast spin. He cites this 1,000 miles an hour figure countless times because it's all he has. When you're going 500 miles an hour in a plane, do you feel it? No, because you don't feel motion at constant velocity. You only feel acceleration and deceleration. It's not that hard to understand. As the Earth rotates, everything moves together at a constant rate. There's nothing to feel. When a breeze occurs, air is moving relative to your stationary body, so you feel it. Got it? 30. Some explorer guy. He felt wind down at sea level and clouds much higher moved in a different direction. I wonder if different air currents can exist at different altitudes. 4,000 feet of elevation above the trade winds, you say? What's funniest about this is that it has absolutely nothing to do with the rotation of the Earth. The guy is saying there is wind pushing the ships in one direction at sea level and wind pushing clouds in a different direction at higher elevation. Even if the Earth was flat, he would still be totally dumbfounded by this fact. Where does the rotation come into play here exactly? Nowhere. 31. More big numbers. No, Earth rotating does not cause wind. The atmosphere also moves with Earth's rotation. Somebody should spend less time flying kites and more time learning basic physics. 32. Gravity is crazy. How the heck do big fat oceans stick to the Earth while tiny, puny, weak little bugs and birds can fly? This is one of the best examples of how dumb this guy is. The gravitational force increases with mass. Heavier things have a harder time counteracting gravity. Weight only exists because of gravity, and it depends on mass. Oceans are enormous and heavy. Bugs and birds are tiny. It's easier to accelerate them against gravity as it requires so much less force. But much more importantly, they have these things called wings. They use them to generate lift, an applied force to counter gravity. As I have famously offered in a previous debunk, oceans don't have wings, nor do they have any form of sentience to decide for themselves which way to go. And guess what? Water goes up into the sky from the ocean all the time anyway. It's called evaporation, you moron. It's part of the water cycle. Check it out sometime. 33. Fish can't swim. I really don't even know what to say with this one. It's that mind-bogglingly stupid. Gravity keeps both water and fish from floating out into space, and fish also swim through water using fins. The end. 34. More fun with travel. Ships don't take Earth's curvature into account ever. But is that really true? No, and it's easy to prove. What are nautical miles? A nautical mile is 1 minute of latitude, or 1/60th of a degree of latitude, which is more practical for long-distance travel because the curvature of the Earth becomes a factor in accurate measurement. Nautical miles were literally invented to take into account Earth's curvature. Whoops, all of this is lies. Anyone who does these kinds of calculations knows the Earth is a sphere, and any flat map of the Earth is distorted because that's what happens when you try to project a curved surface onto a flat one. 35. Latitudes. If the Earth was a sphere, latitude lines would represent smaller and smaller circumferences as they approached the poles. And they do, since the Earth is a sphere. That they don't get larger and larger is proof that the Earth isn't flat. He basically offers up one of the best ways to debunk the flat Earth and just says nuh-uh to his own assertion. His justification is many captains something vague and meaningless. Wow, that's convincing. In reality, there's a sailing race around Antarctica. I repeat, every year a bunch of people sail their boats around Antarctica. That alone proves this Pizza Land map isn't real. 36. Circumnavigating Antarctica. Hey, that's what we were just talking about. Once again, that anyone can do this at all proves this map is bullshit. So he brings it up, spews some random vague numbers, and moves on. Hysterical. 37. More Antarctica. Somebody was exploring, and it was a little fishy. No attempt to validate the numbers, no attempt to contextualize them on a flat Earth, nothing of substance whatsoever. Maybe they were incorrectly presuming that the magnetic pole was located at the geographic South Pole. That's a pretty obvious speculation, but no, it must mean the Earth is flat. 38. More confused ships. Anytime navigators are confused, it's because the Earth is flat, because reasons. 39. A random thing in Australia. These two towns are 1,550 miles apart. Well, no, they're 1,273 kilometers apart, which is around 790 miles, and they're on different latitude lines. So he's lying, which means there's no point in even checking his math, which is probably also wrong. Pathetic. 40. The same thing, but somewhere else. 10,500 miles, huh? That's funny. I get 9,140 kilometers, or about 5,700 miles. Where are you getting these numbers? From the 1500s? Use the internet, moron. 41. Holy hell, the same dumb lie in another place. He says 25,000 miles. It's 10,268 kilometers, or 6,380 miles. Who the hell does this idiot think he's fooling? Does he try to pick up women with this stuff? 42. More Antarctica stuff. The circumference of Antarctica is 12,000 miles. Actually, it's less than 10,000. But what's this? Cook measured 50 to 60,000? Nope. That was the length of his voyage all the way around the world, zigzagging around to many different ports. It has nothing to do with Antarctica. A bald-faced lie. 43. Flights over Antarctica. That's the shortest path for so many flights, he says. Except it isn't. He just draws random lines on this image that don't necessarily represent real flights. Great circles, the paths that planes actually take, don't look like this. Some of them come very close to Antarctica or even fly over the edge of it. Looking at an actual globe, the paths make perfect sense. Also, yes, going directly over the middle of Antarctica is not a good idea. There are storms and blizzards and whatnot, and nowhere to make an emergency landing. Go ahead and charter a private jet and check it out for yourself, genius. 44. More lies about flights. Sydney to Santiago. Why do they always stop in the northern hemisphere? They don't. They fly direct over the Pacific Ocean several times per week, both ways, usually stopping in nearby Auckland, New Zealand. Here's the route they take, and you can stare out the window the whole time and see the Pacific Ocean below you with your own eyes. Flat Earthers continue to pretend that this flight doesn't exist, and yet none of them have the courage to go see for themselves, since this flight single-handedly proves their map is wrong and dumb. 45. More lies about flights. Johannesburg to Perth. Why do they do the crazy blah blah blah? They don't. Yeah, you can get a direct flight between these two cities. Fail. 46. Another flight. Cape Town to Buenos Aires, which he can't spell properly. Direct flights exist. Fail. 47. Another flight. Johannesburg to Sao Paulo, which again he can't spell. Direct flights exist. Another fail. 48. Another flight, Santiago to Johannesburg. I couldn't find direct flights, but all the ones I found connect in Sao Paulo, not Senegal. It's just not a popular enough route to offer the direct flight. Also, it's important to point out that in every single one of these fake flight proofs, he pretends that stops are for refueling. They aren't. They're just totally separate flights. Not every two cities in the world have flights between them. When you travel internationally, you often take one flight, land at an airport, get off the plane, go to another gate, get on another plane, and take another totally unrelated flight. That's how international travel works. This moron is pretending that for all of these routes, the plane lands, all the people stay on the plane, they refuel, and then take off again for the intended destination they all share. This is what happens when you never leave your mother's basement. Save up your yoga money and see the world, Eric. 49. Weather. You heard it from Eric. Hot in Africa, but cold near the poles just doesn't make sense. This dumbass thinks a magical substance called heat is traveling from the sun through outer space to the Earth. All flat earthers think that the sun is a bonfire the Earth is warming its hands with. In reality, electromagnetic radiation from the sun travels through the vacuum of space, which then strikes the Earth and its atmospheric particles, causing excitations that raise their kinetic energies, which we call heating. The light irradiates latitudes near the equator directly, so the heating effect is greater. The light irradiates polar regions at an oblique angle, traversing more atmosphere and distributing the light around a much larger area, so the heating effect is dramatically lesser. So it's colder. Also, all the ice in the polar regions reflects a lot of the light back to space, which contributes to colder temperatures. Everyone learns how the climate and seasons work in elementary school. He must have been sick that day. This one makes me laugh because he isn't just lying or making up numbers. He genuinely is too stupid to understand how climate works. 50. Polar regions should be similar. They are. They should have comparable temperatures, seasonal changes, length of daylight, and they do, objectively. He just baselessly says that they differ in many ways, which they don't, and as proof he shows pictures of polar bears and penguins. Wow, they have different animals. The exact same animals should magically have evolved on the opposite ends of the Earth because reasons. Brilliant. 51. The poles are too different. Well, Eric, the South Pole is found on Antarctica, a continent. That's a fancy word for a big chunk of land. The North Pole is in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, so one pole is land surrounded by ocean, the other pole is ocean surrounded by land. That's pretty different, don't you think? Different enough to cause changes in the way wind moves, not to mention the higher elevation on Antarctica, again because it's a continent with a gigantic ice sheet and mountains and whatnot. Do you get it now? 52. Animals. Iceland has some animals, and this other random island in the southern hemisphere doesn't. So Earth is flat, case closed. This is so mind-numbingly stupid it's not even worth dwelling on. Different places have differing numbers and types of animals. The hemispheres aren't mirror images of each other. 53. Sun stuff. He baselessly asserts that day length during the northern summer is longer than those in the south. Doesn't mention specific locations, doesn't give specific numbers, just because I say so. And of course, he's objectively wrong. Go to the southern tip of South America and see how long and short the days get. He also just says it makes sense on a flat Earth with zero attempt at explaining how, since it definitely doesn't, just like everything else. 54. Dawn and dusk. They happen at different rates. No, they don't. The sun's apparent motion through the sky is constant because the rate of Earth's rotation is constant. He's pulling this directly out of his ass and using words like wobbling for no reason. Also, sunrise and sunset make no sense whatsoever on a flat Earth in general, so pretending that his magic sun circles make sense is also directly from his asshole. 55. Pizza Land magic. No, his ridiculous concentric circles explain precisely nothing and are totally incompatible with literally all observations. If the sun were to be taking this enormous path around the winter solstice, it would have to be illuminating nearly the entire outer section of the pizza all at the same time, while not illuminating the center, which experiences 24-hour darkness at that time. And of course, he ignores the 24-hour sun at the South Pole, which is totally inexplicable here, and just pretends it isn't real. 56. 24-hour sun can only happen precisely at the poles. No, just look at a globe. The portion that is constantly illuminated experiences 24 hours of daylight. The end. 57. Antarctica. That dirty, lying establishment says there is 24-hour daylight at the South Pole, but there's no uncut video of it. Except for all of the uncut video of it. Why is there so much more footage of the midnight sun in the Arctic? Because people live there, moron. Nobody permanently lives at the South Pole, although I've been encouraging flat earthers to apply for jobs there for years, which they totally could get. Also, didn't he just say that there is no 24-hour sun anywhere except precisely directly on top of the geographic poles? Now he's admitting that in the north there's so much footage of it. All of those people were standing right on the pole, huh? 58. More Antarctica. The sun disappears for a few months? That's crazy. No, it isn't. 24-hour night happens for the exact same reason as 24-hour day, just when Earth is at the opposite point in its orbit around the sun. Just look at a globe and see that as Earth rotates, this part is never facing the sun. The end. Also, no, it makes zero sense whatsoever on his pizza land. Just because the sun is running the tighter circle, it doesn't mean light magically wouldn't reach the edge of the disk. Basically, nighttime in general makes no sense on a flat Earth at all. 59. More made-up quotes. No, day and night should not be 12 hours each because of the tilt in Earth's rotational axis. Pick any latitude and observe what fraction of it is illuminated at any given time. Then observe how that changes as Earth orbits the sun. This is so unbelievably easy to understand, it's ridiculous. 60. The horizon. It's so flat, you guys. Just take some wooden planks and eyeball it. That's reliable. Except it isn't. Our eyes are not sophisticated measuring devices, and when we use those instead, we can measure the curvature of the horizon even at sea level, which becomes more and more pronounced with altitude. Earth is really big. If you were a bacterium on a basketball, it'd look flat to you. Zoom in on a circle until it looks like a straight line. You get the picture. 61. More horizon stuff. If Earth were a ball, we should see lots of curvature on the horizon, even at sea level. Why? Because you say so? Everything would be like the Leaning Tower of Pisa? It's Pisa, jackass. My family's from there, so I get to be mad about that one. This moron thinks a planet with a 25,000-mile circumference should be the same as one of those tiny planets from Le Petit Prince, or that walking around should be like playing Mario Galaxy or something. Earth is really, really big, idiot. 62. Bedford level thingy. One time that grifter Sam Robotham I told you about lied and said the water was flat. He didn't account for the height of the flag, he didn't account for refraction, and the experiment was repeated a bunch of times since then and the curvature was confirmed. 63. More lies from Sam. Another flag thing that didn't happen. 64. Sam again. For a while here, Dubé just straight up copy-pastes section of the book he's plagiarizing, just to make it perfectly clear that he doesn't even want to pretend to have his own original thoughts. Here, Sam is vomiting some garbage about sticks and a string and pretending the horizon is flat, which it isn't, as we already showed, and the idiot pretends a ship sailing 40 miles should be going up and down a big hill of water because he's an idiot who doesn't understand scale, just like Dubé. 65. Sam again. He's describing the process of watching a ship sail away and disappear from the bottom up, a very clear demonstration of the curvature of the Earth that has been acknowledged for millennia, and pretending it somehow proves the Earth is flat because of some numbers he made up. Again, watching ships disappear bottom up is one of the clearest demonstrations of Earth's curvature that a person can experience. This is the pathetic way flat earthers attempt to engage with it. 66. Sam again. He used some shitty instruments to prove everything is super duper flat. This is obviously a blatant lie because there is literally nowhere on Earth that's perfectly and immaculately flat, even disregarding Earth's curvature. So no, he did not do this. Also, the idea that the shape of the Earth was a hot topic of debate any time in the past several thousand years is the most laughably idiotic claim imaginable. 67. We see too far. He lies about the distance between these places, lies about the required vantage point for the view, and makes up the other numbers. 68. We see too far. These two places have a driving route that is already less than 40 miles, so the straight line distance is way less than that. The picture he shows is obviously from a pretty high elevation, and yet we still can't see the bottoms of the buildings. 69. We see too far. The driving distance is 46 miles, so the straight line distance is way less than 60. The picture is taken from the top of a mountain, and the bottoms of the buildings are obscured due to Earth's curvature. But wow, he spelled Pythagorean correctly. Impressive. Couldn't figure out how to draw a triangle, though. Shapes are hard. 70. We see too far. Philly and New York again, which are in opposite directions from this location, so I have no idea what this picture is supposed to be, and there is not even an attempt to show fake math to justify this number. 71. We see too far. Chicago skyline from the other side of the lake. Since this is right over water, refraction plays a big role here, which he even mentions, but then just hand waves away, just like the fact that we can only see the top portions of the buildings, which proves that the curvature is there. If there was no curvature, we could see all of the buildings. The numbers are made up, and he's so dumb that he pretends the buildings should be leaning away from us in a way that is noticeable. 60 miles out of 25,000 means this distance represents 0.24% of the circumference of the Earth. Take that percentage of 360 degrees, and you get 0.864 degrees. The buildings should have a vertical alignment that is less than 1 degree off the vertical of the observer, an amount that would be very hard to detect even if you were standing right next to something. 72. We see too far. He's lying about the distance and the math. There's a ton of these in a row, so I'm going to save a little time here. 73. We see too far. He's lying about the distance and the math. 74. We see too far. He's lying about the elevation and the math. 75. We see too far. He's lying about the elevation and the math. 76. We see too far. He's lying about the elevation and the math. 77. We see too far for the 4th time in a row from the exact same location. He was really desperate to inflate the numbers, I guess. He's lying about the elevation and the math. 78. We see too far. He's lying about the math, pretending the mountain should be leaning, and baselessly claiming we can see the entire mountain. 79. We see too far. He's lying about the elevation and the math, and again pretending we can see the base of the mountain, even though in the picture he provides, you clearly can't. 80. We see too far. He either totally made this up or the guy he is referencing was lying. Nobody saw a ship 200 miles away. That's impossible, which is why flat earthers don't just show a ship 200 miles away, or anything at sea level 200 miles away, anywhere, ever. 81. We see too far. He's lying about the distance and the math. 82 through 89. We see too far. Lighthouse's lightning round. He's lying about all the distances and all the math. Also, the way the beam of light widens with distance makes the light visible beyond the point where the lighthouse itself is visible. 90. We see too far. You can see the Statue of Liberty from 60 miles away. From what elevation? Not listed. How much of it can you see? Not specified. But here's a picture from right next to the statue for no reason at all. Also, this statue was once used as a lighthouse, so the thing we just said about light from lighthouses. 91. We see too far. Another lighthouse, because he didn't do enough of those before. He's lying about the distance and the math. 92. We see too far. He's lying about the distance and the math and the elevation, since observations from ships take place from a crow's nest, specifically in order to see farther because of Earth's curvature. 93. We see too far. He's lying about the elevation and the math. 94. We see too flat. Ooh, a little variety. This 22-mile-long flat thing should be curved. Well, it isn't a perfectly straight line. There is no such thing as a perfectly straight line in nature. This is just one of Rowbotham's shitty drawings that have no correlation with reality and don't prove anything. 95. We see too flat again. No, it's not perfectly horizontal. 96. We see too far, Encore edition. Some flat earth jerk lied about seeing a light. And that wraps up the We See Too Far portion of the pamphlet, which constitutes 30 of the 200 entries. Astounding. 97. NASA stuff. Tilted back doesn't mean anything. Earth's rotational axis is tilted 23.5 degrees off of the vertical with respect to the ecliptic, or the plane of the solar system. It's not wobbling unless he is talking about Milankovitch cycles, which take many thousands of years. And it's not spinning 1,000 miles per hour, it spins once per day. Then he continues with the big scary numbers game, some of which are accurate while others are made up. Then he pretends all of this motion originated in the Big Bang because he's a moron who knows zero things about cosmology. And then he wraps up his tantrum with "nuh-uh because me no feel it." I wonder if he's been on a plane before. And yes, it is very easy to measure all of these things. If you took an astronomy class, you'd learn precisely how we figured all of this out. I won't hold my breath. 98. Star is far away. But how far away? Scientists not know. This isn't a range, it's two different figures, the smaller of which is the revised distance based on better information. That's how science works. We learned more about Cepheid variable stars that revise the number, because we are looking at the brightness of the star to determine the distance, in addition to other factors like parallax. No, Polaris is not perfectly aligned with the North Pole, it's just very close. It even makes a star trail, and again, it exhibits parallax, which we can measure, and it drifts over time, specifically due to the precession of the rotational axis that he is trying to refer to, but failing, since he doesn't even bother to learn the basic vocabulary of astronomy. Polaris became the North Star around 500 CE. Around 3000 BCE, it was Thuban, which is why certain ancient architecture aligned with it in deliberate ways. Later, it will be another star. 99. More Polaris. Since it is aligned with the North Pole, we shouldn't be able to see it anywhere in the southern hemisphere. If you're on the equator and you take one step south, it should vanish. Again, the star isn't flawlessly aligned with the pole. Atmospheric effects exist, and it's not visible at 20 degrees south latitude. He's just lying. At the equator, it's right on the horizon. But much more importantly, if the Earth were flat, you'd be able to see it from anywhere. In fact, everyone would see all the same stars from absolutely anywhere. You can't because it's a sphere. By pointing out that stars become obscured by the Earth at certain latitudes, the idiot debunks himself and doesn't even know it. 100. More stars. The Southern Cross should be visible from any southern longitude. Well, it is. He's just lying. And furthermore, people in different continents can all see it at the same time by looking directly south, even though on his pizza land that would mean all looking in completely different directions. More self-debunking. 101. More star stuff. The southern pole star vanishes and can't be seen with telescopes. No, it's faintly visible even to the naked eye, just not well enough to be used for navigation. You can see it with any telescope. Then the moron says that the direction of apparent motion for the stars depends on the direction you're facing, not the hemisphere you're in. Okay, genius, in the south, star trails go clockwise. Tell me which direction you can face that'll make them go counterclockwise. Here's another way to express how unbelievably dumb that is. Put a clock on your ceiling. Which way can you face to make the hands run counterclockwise? Oh, that's impossible and you're a moron with zero capacity for spatial reasoning? Yeah. 102. Declination and perspective. Yeah, look how these telegraph poles right in front of you converge with the horizon. A star that is directly straight up above your head should also do that, because reasons. This isn't a vanishing point. These objects don't get smaller and they go below the horizon. Stars disappearing below the horizon and new ones appearing as you change latitude is proof of Earth's curvature. We've known this for centuries. That's what a sextant was invented for in the 18th century, to measure the angle between a star and the horizon in order to determine your latitude. 103. Shouldn't see the star. Anyone with a line of sight to the star can see the star. It's not that hard to understand. And again, if the Earth were flat, all stars would be visible everywhere. 104. Another shouldn't see the star. Two of these constellations are from the zodiac, which are the constellations that sit in the ecliptic. As the Earth rotates, most people have a line of sight to them and can see them. 105. More zodiac constellations. What is this idiot not getting? And yes, hemispheres are not spheres. Hemi means half a sphere. Nor are they concentric circles on his imaginary pizza land. It's just a circle and a washer. Learn what words mean before you use them in a sentence. 106. South Pole not real. There is no barber shop pole. This is what happens when all of your scientific knowledge comes from children's cartoons. And the South Pole isn't arbitrary. The poles are the points on Earth's surface that are aligned with its rotational axis. This moron's proof is him not knowing how compasses work. First of all, the magnetic poles are different from the geographic poles. He has no clue how magnetic fields work or why Earth has one, a fact that makes no sense on a flat Earth. But anyway, compass needles align themselves with magnetic field lines. Those originate at the North Magnetic Pole, which is actually near the South Geographic Pole, and flow to the South Magnetic Pole in the north. At the magnetic poles, there are no field lines to align with, and a compass is useless. Also, what does a compass do at the North Pole? Funny how he doesn't mention that, huh? And no, it's not an excuse that the magnetic poles move, it's just what they do. If you knew anything about planetary magnetic fields, you'd never say something so stupid. 107. Ring magnets. No, a ring magnet's south pole is not its circumference. The two faces are the north and south pole, just like the disc magnets we play with as kids. That's why one face is attractive and the other is repulsive. Again, just like disc magnets. This is just a dumb lie to pretend that a flat Earth can have the magnetic field we observe, which it definitely can't. Then he just whines about geology he doesn't understand. That the magnetic poles move doesn't mean they can't be verified, and the interior structure of the Earth is not speculative in the slightest. We don't need to drill all the way to Earth's core to know it's there. We determine Earth's structure primarily through seismology. I have geology tutorials you can watch if you'd like to learn about that, Eric. That's a joke. I know you're allergic to learning. 108. Compasses are dumb. Again, the compass needle aligns with magnetic field lines. That's why it points toward the two magnetic poles. Yes, the poles move. They drift a few miles per year. So what? Stop pretending that makes compasses useless. And good lord, if the compass needle was pointing to the North Pole, the other end would magically bend at a right angle and point to outer space? Why? This is one of the dumbest things any human being has ever written. The needle aligns with magnetic field lines. If this sentence is too complicated for you to understand, it's nobody's problem but yours. 109. Cardinal directions. He's basically just claiming the South Pole doesn't exist because he says so, and then ignoring the fact that east and west are circles on his pizza land, which makes zero sense, because ships and planes don't constantly turn in one direction as they travel directly east or west. 110. Explorers. Yes, you can have make-believe fun times and trace Magellan's path on your imaginary pizza land. That's not proof of anything. Sorry. 111. Circumpolar navigation, meaning traveling around the world from pole to pole and then up the other side to the first pole. He says nobody has ever done it, except of course for all the times people definitely totally have done that. Many times. By land and water, as well as by plane. He pretends they haven't because he's an intellectually bankrupt, grifting fraud. So contrary to this sentence here, that it has been done is conclusive proof that the Earth isn't flat, unless you want to pretend there are Pac-Man warp zones on your imaginary ice wall, and I wouldn't put it past you. 112. Days are crazy. If a day is exactly one rotation of the Earth, then every 6 months, day would become night and night would become day. Nope. One 360-degree rotation of the Earth is called a sidereal day. What we commonly call a day is actually a solar day, which is a tiny bit more than one rotation, just enough more to bring the sun to the same position in the sky. These are very Googleable words and concepts that he's never heard of because he's a willfully ignorant asshat. 113. Upside down craziness. Stupid globers think people are upside down and sideways and stuff. Down is toward the center of the Earth. Up is away from the center of the Earth. Your common sense sucks, and you're not a free thinker. You're a gullible moron who thinks there should be some universal up and down in space for absolutely no reason. And as an extra bonus, he says Newtonian Einsteinian paradigm, not realizing that those are two completely different paradigms. 114. More upside down stuff. Quoting a moron is an argument, right? When these idiots pretend that some people are upside down, what exactly is it that's supposed to be pulling them down? And to where? These idiots are so used to thinking in terms of gravity on the surface of the Earth that when they imagine the Earth in space, they're still picturing the floor under it, thinking that things should fall down from their arbitrary perspective. That's how dumb they are. There is no up or down in space. 115. Silly Newton. When he came up with gravity, it's just because he was a Freemason Illuminati lizard person. Things don't fall because of gravity, it's density and buoyancy. Denser things go down and less dense things go up. Duh. But why? Oh, right. Gravity. The Earth is pulling things towards its center, and it pulls heavier things more strongly, according to Newton's equation. They pretend that objects magically know to fall down when the air above them is even less dense than the air below them, so by their logic, objects should all be flying upwards. Also, apart from planets and stars, which he pretends aren't real, the gravitational force was demonstrated by the Cavendish experiment, which flat earthers pretend isn't real but won't say why. This is middle school level physics. 116. Orbits are dumb. Nobody has done an experiment to make things orbit each other. Stupid scientists can't even make stars and planets. What losers. Hey moron, did you know that other planets have their own moons that orbit them? You should check it out. Gravity isn't magic, spheres don't have bottoms, moons and artificial satellites stay in orbit because of their incredible lateral velocity. No, you can't orbit Earth by jumping, and Eric is the dumbest person alive. 117. More Newton. Earth bigger, so it make more gravity on moon than moon do on Earth. Well, idiot, the equation calculates the gravitational force between two objects. This is the force each exerts on the other. The two experience differing accelerations due to that gravitational force because they have differing masses and therefore differing inertia. The moon isn't superseding Earth's gravity. That would mean the moon was sucking the oceans up into space and onto the moon. It doesn't do that. And then he throws in the phrase great attractor just to sound as dumb as possible. 118. Tide stuff. The gravitational influence of the moon is always the same, so the tides should always be the same. Well, different bodies of water have different depths and volumes, and newsflash, large lakes have tides. It's astounding that you didn't know that. You want a tiny pond to show huge tides because you're an idiot with no concept of scale, which is the main reason you're a flat earther. 119. Planets. Other planets are spheres, but that doesn't mean Earth is one. Well, Earth is objectively a planet and a sphere, and we see other planets which help us understand ours. Yes, we've known about most of the planets in the solar system for a long time, because we can see them. We didn't know what they were until modern astronomy. No, they do not look like stars or disks of light through a telescope. He's clearly never looked at planets through a telescope. They look like planets. Of course, to him, pictures of planets are all fake NASA CGI Satan magic, especially the early ones from the 1960s when CGI didn't exist. Check out these Mariner 4 images of Mars. Total Hollywood rubbish, am I right? And all the amazing ones we have today are not CGI, that's just the buzzword he uses to dismiss anything that proves him wrong. There are plenty of film photographs of other planets, and digital images are not CGI. Also, flat earthers have no idea how to use cameras, so they get images that are overexposed or out of focus, and they make up fantasies based on that. 120. Wordplay. The word planet comes from the word plane, because planes are flat. They just added a T at the end. No, it comes from a Greek word meaning wanderer, because planets moved at a different rate along the ecliptic than the stars, and even exhibited retrograde motion. It comes from wanderer. He knows it comes from wanderer, and even says that it comes from wanderer. He then ignores everything he just said and claims it comes from plane. He pre-debunks himself and then lies anyway. Unbelievable. 121. Sun and moon stuff. They look exactly the same size, so they are exactly the same size. Common sense. Case closed. Well, they don't appear exactly the same size, just really close. And I guess when Eric holds his thumb up to the skyline, his thumb is suddenly as big as a skyscraper. That's how dumb this guy is. Has he never seen an optical illusion? Forced perspective when they film movies to make hobbits look really tiny? No, you can't tell how far away they are just by looking and making up whatever you want. He wraps this up with a little tantrum. The Earth looks flat to you because you're dumb and don't understand scale. You can't feel that something is stationary because you can't feel motion at constant velocity. And yes, you are a complete moron that should be ridiculed every minute of every day because you think your stupidity is worth more than the collective knowledge of the entire human race. 122. Sharing the stupid. Another quote. Who the shit is Alan Daves? Either nobody who matters or literally nobody. But either way, pointing at someone who says the same dumb thing as Dubé doesn't make him any less wrong and dumb. 123. Science changes, so it's wrong. Yep, because measurements have been refined over half a millennium, it's all smoke and mirrors. Of course, flat earthers have their own pretend measurements, and they can keep them the same over time because they're not actually based on anything. 124. Sunlight. Sunlight means the sun is close. Just look at this. The sun must be like right there where the cloud is. Except it isn't. And a second ago he said it's thousands of miles above his pizza land, which is still pretty far. So obviously a faraway sun does this stuff, and he has zero basis to pretend sunlight shouldn't do this. In reality, there are no localized hotspots. That doesn't mean anything. 125. More sunlight. Look at the angles. They say the sun isn't millions of miles away because reasons. It's actually really close to the clouds. Just above the clouds, in fact. Even though we've been up there and no it isn't. And again, he already said it's thousands of miles away. Make up your mind, moron. These are crepuscular rays. It's perspective, a word you like to use all the time. Also, ever see sunlight illuminating the bottoms of clouds at dusk? Yeah, that's impossible on a flat Earth. 126. Seasons. Summer is when the Earth is farther away from the sun? That's crazy. Well, no, you're just a moron who thinks the seasons have to do with the distance from the sun. They don't. It's about the tilt in Earth's rotational axis and how directly different latitudes are being irradiated, which changes throughout the year. Also, when it's winter in the north, it's summer in the south, which does correlate with what he's saying about distance, so he's just pretending the southern hemisphere doesn't exist for this point so that he can say it and sound less stupid. Mission failed. 127. Light on the water. How does it happen? Light can't curve. This is insane gibberish. Whatever has a direct line to the light source can be illuminated by it. Shine a flashlight on a beach ball or something. Get your life together. 128. Sundials. How do they still work if Earth is doing crazy, spinny, wobbly, spirally stuff? More insane gibberish. Sundials work because Earth rotates. The precession of the axis takes many thousands of years, and there is no spiral. 129. Telescopes. When you're looking at something through a telescope, why doesn't it move? Checkmate, globies. Well, they do move. Telescope mounts slowly move the telescope so that we can observe things for extended durations of time. This used to be done manually, now it's done with computers. This idiot has literally never looked out of a telescope before. 130. More transparency about plagiarizing Sam. Do something stupid with tubes and all of science is wrong. No, I'm sure he never actually did this, but even if he did do this in the early 19th century, the tools weren't precise enough to do what he's saying. 131. The moon. It's not a solid and it's not a sphere, you guys. It's a little spotlight thingy. Well, people have walked on it, so no. But of course that's all fake because reasons. But I've looked at the moon through the telescope at Mount Wilson Observatory, and it's definitely a big spherical rock with topographical features and shadows all over it. Oh right, you've never looked through a telescope in your entire life. What else? Oh, yeah, that we all see the same face of the moon proves the Earth isn't flat. If it's a little disk, it would change shape in the sky as it moves, no matter which way it was facing, and it definitely would never rise or set. It's a sphere that's tidally locked in its orbit around the Earth, and it inverts as you travel from one set of latitudes to the other, again, because Earth is a sphere. 132. Light. Sunlight is a bunch of stuff, and moonlight is a bunch of other stuff. No, it isn't. Moonlight is reflected sunlight, and most of this stuff is objectively not things that light can do. Electromagnetic radiation can't be damp. It can't be cooling. It doesn't affect combustion. It doesn't do any of these things. He's just a moron with no clue what light is. 133. More light stuff. It's hotter under the sun than in the shade, but then at night it's hotter in the shade than under the moon? That's crazy. Moonlight must be cold. Well, no, that's not how light or heat work. Light can't cool anything ever. Light induces excitations and vibrations in particles that increases their kinetic energy, and temperature is a measure of the average kinetic energy of particles in a system. In reality, whatever was providing shade during the day is also trapping heat as it emanates from the Earth while things cool down at night. That's why it's a tiny bit warmer under there, and that's why the readings are different. No, there has never been an experiment whereby moonlight has caused the reading on a thermometer to decrease. That's a dumb lie. 134. More moon stuff. A sphere can't reflect light, you guys. That's so silly. Well, go get a tennis ball. Can you see it? That's because it's reflecting light. Any object you can see with your eyeballs that isn't emanating its own light is reflecting light. That's how vision works. 135. More moon stuff. No, the moon clearly is not self-luminescent, or there would never be lunar phases. We can't see the half of the moon that isn't being illuminated by the sun apart from faint earthshine, because moonlight is reflected sunlight. No, you can't see sky through the moon because the moon isn't in our atmosphere, you idiot. Sky is between us and the moon. And no, you can't see stars and planets through the moon, nor is there any record of that anywhere. That's a dumb lie he made up, which is why he just baselessly asserts it and doesn't show any such evidence. 136. Eclipses. Yes, predicting eclipses with remarkable precision is proof of heliocentrism. Sorry. No, eclipses were not predicted thousands of years ago the way they are today. They noticed and recorded periodicities and could say roughly what day an eclipse would occur. Now we know when they will occur down to the second and can trace the path of a total eclipse viewing window down to the square mile. Can you do that, Eric? Use your pizza land and do some pretend math and predict the next one. Be sure to show your work. Also, when you say heliocentric ball Earth, you sound like a moron. We knew the Earth was a sphere for nearly 2,000 years before we developed heliocentrism. Ptolemy knew the Earth is a sphere. The Ptolemaic model, though geocentric, is based on a spherical Earth. It is astounding that you don't know that. 137. More eclipses. Yes, lunar eclipses are caused by Earth's shadow being cast on the moon, which is physically impossible on your pizza land. Lunar eclipses single-handedly demolish your fantasy. Also, even as far back as Aristotle, noticing the circular shadow the Earth casts on the moon was a big clue as to the spherical shape of the Earth, since spheres cast circular shadows. And no, typically you can't see the sun during a lunar eclipse. On occasion, you see them just barely above the horizon, an event called a selenalion, and that's due to refractive effects that bring the apparent position of the sun just barely into view. You can't see them both way high in the sky ever. There is no other explanation for lunar eclipses, and you morons don't even try to offer one, except for the handful bold enough to pretend that there's some other object in the sky that magically appears only during lunar eclipses and then disappears right away, which is ridiculous. 138. Ships go bye-bye. Yes, watching ships disappear bottom up as they sail away was a very early demonstration of Earth's curvature, and in fact, all sailors knew the Earth is a sphere, since they used right ascension and declination of stars over a spherical Earth for navigation. No, just blindly shouting law of perspective will not save you here. There is no justification regarding perspective that makes the bottoms of things disappear while their tops remain visible, and girls with dresses absolutely don't disappear this way as they are frantically running away from Sam Robotham, whose drawing you stole. 139. More ships. No, you can't bring things back into view with a telescope that are obscured by Earth's curvature. Telescopes aren't magic, and if you could somehow bring the hull of the ship back into view, it would also debunk your dumb law of perspective claim, so this is a double fail. 140. Foucault's pendulum. Yes, this object does prove that Earth is rotating. His attempt to discredit this is gibberish. He pretends that the initial force matters, which obviously it doesn't, since no amount of force along a particular plane would cause rotational motion, and the joint is also irrelevant. The rest makes no sense. Earth turning wouldn't make hanging objects suddenly start oscillating. 141. Coriolis stuff. The Coriolis effect is the deflection of an object moving on or near the surface of the Earth due to Earth's rotation. It's one of the best and most irrefutable proofs that the Earth is a sphere, so of course they have to bring it up and pretend to debunk a dumb straw man. No, toilets and sinks don't do this. That's a myth. But storms sure do. Hurricanes rotate counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern. This makes absolutely zero sense on his pizza land, and no flat earther has ever genuinely engaged with this irrefutable and observable fact. 142. Seeing not far enough. Yes, if the Earth were flat, you should be able to use a telescope to see very, very far. Not indefinitely far, but orders of magnitude farther than we do. We don't, so of course he just says, yes we do, and leaves it at that. Very convincing. 143. Sun stuff. Yes, if Earth were flat, everyone would see the sun at all times, and night would not exist. The sun is not a spotlight. If it were, it would not appear circular, but rather elliptical, and change shape depending on its position with respect to an observer, and whatever was blocking it from radiating in all directions would be clearly visible. Also, this pathetic drawing does not correlate with the portion of the Earth that is illuminated by the sun anytime ever. The last bit is gibberish. The atmosphere scatters light, but also we do go from day to night very quickly. Once the last part of the sun fully sets, it's night. 144. Moon stuff. Yes, the orientation of the face of the moon depending on latitude is proof that the Earth is a sphere. He makes zero attempt to refute a diagram like this and just baselessly asserts that it makes sense on a flat Earth with zero explanation. 145. More moon stuff. Yes, it's a sphere. No, it doesn't appear like a flat disk any more than any other spherical object viewed from one vantage point. There is no dark side of the moon, there's just the side always facing away from us because it's tidally locked, just like dozens of other moons we can observe. This bit about motions canceling out is gibberish he spews because he doesn't understand what tidal locking means. We have plenty of images of all of the lunar surface, the earliest of which are film photographs from the 1960s before CGI existed. No, we should not expect anyone anywhere to see a different face of the moon because it's tidally locked. The distance from the equator to the poles is negligible compared to the distance from the Earth to the moon. It's like having two people face each other, each take 100 paces backwards, and pretending one should be able to see the side of the other's head by stepping an inch to the left or right. 146. More moon stuff. No, the moon does not orbit the Earth every single day. Earth rotates every day. He is pulling this completely out of his ass and doing nothing whatsoever to substantiate it. 147. More sun stuff. No, not precisely any of this. Roughly. The apparent size of the sun and moon are not flawlessly identical. That's why you often see an outer ring during a solar eclipse called a ring of fire, because the moon doesn't completely cover the sun. That their apparent sizes are very close is indeed a coincidence, and there is no reason his magic sky daddy would make them exactly the same size on his pizza land in the first place. 148. Sam's my hero. This is pretty cryptic, but I think he's acknowledging the difference between a sidereal day and a solar day, which proves heliocentrism, and then just pretending it doesn't do that. 149. Constellations. They always stay in exactly the same place. What's up with that? Well, no, they don't. The zodiac constellations change throughout the year since those are the ones in the ecliptic, so half of them are obscured by the sun at any given time. The rest change very slowly because stars do move with respect to one another, but they are also unimaginably far apart. Nevertheless, ancient star charts are noticeably different from modern ones, and sophisticated instruments can chart the changes in the night sky year after year. This is an irrefutable fact, so he just jumps straight to incredulity with all his, "Wah, this spin, that spin, Big Bang is dumb" script for morons. This is one of the most stunning examples of simultaneously ignoring trivial common knowledge and being too stupid to comprehend basic spatial reasoning. 150. Star trails. If Earth was spinning, how could we capture star trails? Star trails exist specifically because the Earth is rotating, you moron. This is just breathtaking. He points to something that only makes sense on a spherical Earth and just craps his pants. 151. More star trails. Hey, remember how the Earth is orbiting the Sun? That would make star trails impossible. Well, no, it wouldn't, since the amount of Earth's orbit that is traversed over a few hours one night is completely negligible, especially compared to the distances to the stars. Stars are extremely far away. They are all rotating around galactic center in the same direction, and the motion of the galaxy itself is totally irrelevant. He has to play the big scary number game every time because he's too stupid to learn anything. 152. Flat stuff. Kansas is super flat, you guys. Well, no, it isn't. Not the way he is pretending, anyway. Flat in this context means very little change in elevation. Elevation conforms to the curvature of the Earth. It's the distance from the surface to a point, and the surface is curved. Children can understand this. 153. Quoting more idiots. In this case, it's another idiot who doesn't know what level means and that it doesn't mean flat. Imagine a planet that is an absolutely perfect and featureless sphere. There would then be no change in elevation anywhere, not even a millimeter. It's still a sphere. Use your brain. 154. Picture from orbit. When Felix did the crazy jump, everyone saw the curvature of the Earth, so he has to pretend we didn't. One image had a crazy fisheye lens that distorted the horizon, because he says so, even though nothing immediately in the frame is distorted in any way. And we should instead look at the image from inside the capsule, where we can only see a tiny bit of the horizon through the window, and it looks kind of sort of flat, so that's what it is. 155. Look out of the plane. Oh, you see a tiny bit of curvature? Well, that's the window, because Eric says so. In reality, planes don't fly high enough to see unmistakable curvature. It has nothing to do with windows. Then he just revisits other greatest hits about the horizon at eye level, which it isn't. Yes, the Earth is below you, and no, you shouldn't see outer space. 156. GoPro footage. Yes, weather balloons that ascend to very high altitudes that are equipped with GoPros very clearly show the curvature of the Earth. This is devastating for flat earthers, so they just pretend it isn't real. It can be exaggerated with wide-angle lenses, that doesn't mean it isn't there. 157. Atmosphere. If the Earth was spinning like so super duper fast, there would be crazy fast winds all over the place. Again, the Earth spins once per day, and wind is motion of the air with respect to the ground. Atmosphere rotating along with the Earth is not wind. Planes have nothing to do with any of this. 158. More atmosphere. Again, he can't grasp the concept that atmosphere rotating with the Earth is not wind. If atmospheric particles were to maintain precisely the same position with respect to the ground, as he is pretending is the case for this straw man, that would not be wind. It would not be moving at all from the perspective of someone on the ground. This is toddler level stuff. But hey, something about fireworks and balloons. 159. More atmosphere. Gravitized, super spinny air has to meet not gravitized, not spinny space. What's up with that? The atmosphere gets thinner and thinner with altitude along a very clear gradient, easily demonstrated by the very reliable and measurable reduction in atmospheric pressure as you ascend in elevation. And the line he's pretending is impossible is called the Kármán line, which is not so much a sharp line, but just a region around 50 miles above sea level where the atmosphere is so incredibly thin that it's essentially now the vacuum of space. So this dumb script about vacuum next to non-vacuum is just him having no clue how the atmosphere works or what a vacuum is. The atmosphere gets thinner and thinner very gradually until you get to a point where there's none left. That's outer space. Your philosophical refutation is actually just you being a moron. 160. Rockets. How the heck do rockets work in space with nothing to push off of? That's so silly. Actually, what's silly is him thinking that rockets need to push off of something, and that pushing off of air is what makes rockets climb upwards in our atmosphere. Rockets produce a backwards thrust which propels the rocket forward. Newton's third law of motion. Get on a skateboard and throw a bowling ball behind you. You'll roll forward. Same principle. Now change it to the violent combustion of 11,000 pounds of fuel per second. The rest is even more embarrassing. The rockets also spin. Yeah, so? Uncontrollably in all directions? That's meaningless. And how could we go to the moon with crazy gravity sucking everywhere? That's what the rocket is for, moron. We have to apply an enormous force to escape Earth's gravity. 161, the plane thing again. Literally the same exact thing again about how planes should magically fly into space by flying straight. He's as lazy as he is stupid. 162, more rockets. They don't go straight up. What's up with that? They obviously should go straight up to go to space. They're going into orbit, you nitwit. They follow a trajectory that will put them in orbit. You can't go straight up and then make a 90-degree turn to enter orbit. Use your brain. And what is this about the few that are successful? As though all rockets fail and fall to Earth or explode midair? That's directly out of his rectum. And yeah, rockets in low Earth orbit aren't free floating. They are falling. They are falling to Earth just like anything else. They're just going so fast that they fall at the same rate that Earth's curvature is produced. That's literally what an orbit is. How do you not know this stuff? 163. Fake NASA lies. No, none of this stuff ever happened, he's just lying. Astronauts often train in large pools because the buoyancy is a cheap way to mimic the weightlessness of space. Flat Earthers take footage from these activities and pretend that space agencies are presenting astronauts in space, or they take genuine spacewalk footage and say it's fake because reasons. 164. More NASA lies. All the footage from the ISS is fake, you guys. Everything is harnesses. And oh man, the crazy permed hair and green screens everywhere. No, there are no harnesses or green screens, apart from the maneuvers that would be literally impossible with harnesses as they move about the entire cabin of the space station. They also play with water and do other things where harnesses have no application, and for way longer than the duration of a Vomit Comet trip. The hair thing is especially funny to me. Some people have thin, straight hair. Some people have thick, frizzy hair. Different hair behaves differently in orbit. Flat Earthers take the thick, frizzy hair, and because it doesn't float around like angel hair pasta, they pretend they are using some kind of product to make it stick up. So basically, they've just never touched frizzy hair before. 165. The ISS. Flat Earthers pretend that satellites aren't real, but the ISS is visible from the ground with the naked eye. Uh-oh, time to lie. When you zoom in, it's totally a hologram or drone or something. No, it isn't. But it totally morphs and changes color and stuff. No, it doesn't. Here are some pictures of the ISS from Earth. Can't get much clearer than that. Of course, any picture that proves them wrong is fake NASA CGI voodoo because they say so. 166. Other satellites. Arthur C. Clarke came up with the idea for satellites, and he was a dirty Freemason Illuminati lizard person. Yes, radio existed prior to satellites. Then we invented satellites and could broadcast a signal all over the world. You're just reciting the history of radio. Yes, cables exist. Yes, towers exist because they're interacting with the satellites, which objectively exist. 167. More satellites. The thermosphere is so super hot, you guys. Anything made of metal would totally burn up there. Just more of this idiot demonstrating he doesn't know what heat or temperature mean. Temperature is the measure of the average kinetic energy of the particles in a system. Yes, atmospheric particles way up in the thermosphere are super hot and move super fast. But what's the density? Practically zero. In order for heat transfer to occur, particles have to collide with other particles. It doesn't matter how hot atmospheric particles are if there are so unbelievably few of them. Here's an example that even your tiny pea brain can understand, Eric. When you bake some cookies for your mommy as a thank you for letting you live in her basement well into your 40s, the oven is at 450 degrees. Wow, that's some super hot air. But when you open the oven to get the cookies, does your face melt? Shouldn't any part of your skin that gets exposed to that crazy hot air get severe burns? No, because it's air. Now stick your hand in a pot of boiling water, which is only half that temperature. That will go much worse for you, because liquid is 1,000 times more dense than gas. That's 1,000 times more particles colliding with your hand and transferring heat. Density matters, moron. The thermosphere doesn't have it. Satellites are just fine up there. 168. More satellites. Yeah, satellites don't beam cell service directly to every single cell phone. It goes to ground towers and then to phones from there. Fewer towers means worse cell service. Come on, man. 169. More satellites. Receiving dishes should point straight up, right? Why? It would depend on your latitude. If you're at the equator and the satellite is directly overhead, dishes point more or less straight up. If not, there's an angle. No, they are not almost always at a 45-degree angle. He picked one photo where they are and is pretending they all do that, because he's a lying fraud. And where is the tower you're pretending these dishes are pointing at? Didn't bother showing us what that looks like, huh? I wonder why. 170. More satellites. Yes, you can see the ISS with the naked eye. Also dozens more. They have to be pretty big and in low Earth orbit, but you can see them. Yes, they're far, but they're very shiny, so they sometimes reflect sunlight in just the right way to be visible. No, satellites are not planes or drones or shooting stars or UFOs. They're satellites. Cry about it. 171. More satellites. Yeah, there are thousands of them. Yeah, some of them take photos of the Earth for various purposes. Yes, individual photos must be composited to get larger images. Low Earth orbit is very close to Earth. That just means the photos are put together like a collage. No, that doesn't make them CGI, and they very obviously are not CGI. That's just a dumb thing you say. It is indeed a simple matter to take some photographs. That's precisely what they do. That the photos are placed next to each other doesn't make them not photographs. If you wanted to take a picture of a skyscraper, but you were standing 10 feet away from it, what would you do? Take several pictures and join them edge to edge. Does that suddenly make the building fake NASA CGI? Use your brain. 172. Clouds. Clouds change shape all the time so super fast, but when we see clouds from space, they don't change literally at all, even one little bit. They don't even move, not even on time-lapse. Except, yes, they do. Whoops, and this little collage here is just him having no ability to understand how photos taken from different cameras would have slightly different coloration. Has he never seen photos from the 70s before? 173. More clouds. Look at this photo with clouds copied and pasted. Okay, so a flat earther took a photo and copied and pasted some clouds. Amazing. 174. More clouds. Look, this cloud spells sex. Yeah, not really. Pictures of Pluto have Pluto the dog in them. No, they don't, which is why he doesn't even attempt to include one. Also, the idea that the super-secret Illuminati society perpetrating the globe hoax would spend quadrillions of dollars per year maintaining the deception, and then also just put sex and cartoon dogs into photos for shits and giggles is completely moronic. 175. CGI trickery. Professional analysts have proven that all those photos are edited and manipulated. No, they haven't. No, pictures of Earth from the moon are not copied and pasted, as that technology did not exist when such film photographs were first taken in the 1960s. Here, Apollo 11. These images are from 1969. Photoshop was invented in 1987. Flat Earthers either misinterpret artifacts or deliberately manipulate the images. 176. More CGI trickery. The colors in the photos change, you guys. Different cameras produce images with different color tones. Also, different lenses, different weather patterns, different seasons, different angle of sunlight, different scientific purpose for the shot. It's not that weird. 177. NASA lies. Eric tells a fake story and says, "Trust me, bro." 178. Google Earth. All those photos are taken from airplanes. No, they're taken from satellites and airplanes. No, the photos can't be modeled onto a square Earth because the Earth isn't a square. 179. Back to the flights. The Earth should be spinning underneath planes. No, it shouldn't. Conservation of momentum. We went over this. 180. More flights. Literally the exact same toddler point, again, just referencing a specific flight. Next. 181. The exact same thing again, but for Tokyo. Next. 182, 183, 184. All the exact same thing over and over and over again. Next. 185. We don't feel anything. He already said this. Again, you don't feel motion at constant velocity. You feel acceleration. You feel forces. Yes, this is easily compared to motion in a car. No, you can't feel the motion when going 50 miles per hour. Maybe you feel tiny little jostles due to imperfections in the road. Otherwise, it feels like sitting in a chair. Just like being in a plane at cruising altitude feels like sitting in a chair. Because you don't feel motion at constant velocity. You don't feel Earth's rotation. Deal with it. 186. But seriously, you should feel it, you guys. People get motion sickness on trains. Why? Because they can be really bumpy, and it's also an optical effect of seeing things out the window go flying by while you sit stationary in a chair. None of that has anything to do with the rotation of the Earth, which is not measured in linear units. 187. Thermodynamics. I sure do love when idiots pretend to understand thermodynamics. Planets can't exist because entropy, you guys. This moron definitely has no clue what entropy is or what the second law of thermodynamics says. Entropy is a measure of the dispersal of matter or energy in a system, and the second law says that the entropy of the universe increases for any spontaneous process. How does that relate to the shape of the Earth? Oh right, it doesn't. Nothing he's describing has anything to do with entropy whatsoever. Coincidentally, the Earth does indeed experience drag due to tidal friction with the Moon, and Earth's rotation is indeed slowing down extremely gradually. The length of a day is increasing by 1.8 milliseconds per century. As you can imagine, that's not very noticeable, and it's also totally irrelevant to the shape of the Earth. 188. NASA can't get their story straight. First it's a perfect sphere, then it's an oblate spheroid, then it's pear-shaped? What gives? No, NASA never said it's a perfect sphere. NASA was established in the 1950s when we already knew that the Earth is an oblate spheroid, which means it is very nearly spherical, just not quite a perfect sphere. There is a slight bulge at the equator due to the rotation. The picture he shows is just an arbitrary oblate spheroid, not Earth. The pear thing is just something Neil Tyson said once to make the bulge more relatable. He didn't mean it was shaped like a literal pear, so this cartoon is stupid. Pictures seem to show a spherical Earth because the shape of the Earth is only a small fraction of a percent away from being a sphere. 189. Old books. Yeah, old books say a lot of dumb things. Who cares? 190. Old cultures. Yeah, old cultures had slaves and sacrificed children and generally had no clue what anything was or why anything happened whatsoever. Nobody cares. Yes, we figured out it was a sphere roughly around the time of the ancient Greeks, which was about 2,500 years ago. No, it was not a minority view until Copernicus. Every educated person knew the Earth is a sphere for all of the Common Era. Again, the Ptolemaic geocentric model uses a spherical Earth. He's lying. And Copernicus didn't revive heliocentrism. He was the first to develop and demonstrate it in an empirical way. There is so much stupid in this tiny little paragraph, it's astounding. 191. Freemasons. All these people are Freemasons. No, they weren't. You're just circling random objects and making baseless claims. And even if it were true, it wouldn't change the shape of the Earth or all the hundreds of ways we can prove it's a sphere with naked eye observations and logic a toddler could understand. Also, I find it hilarious that he is pretending Pythagoras was a Freemason when he lived 2,000 years before there were Freemasons. Pathetic. 192. More quoting stupid people. We start with this moron having no clue what a theory is or how science works. Educated people can answer any objection, you're just dumb and don't listen, and no, none of these scientists said any of this. 193. Earth is flat because I say so. That's literally it. He straight up just blindly asserts that nobody who isn't indoctrinated would believe in a spherical Earth, and that is counted as one of the proofs that the Earth isn't a sphere. He actually typed these words and showed them to people. It's spectacular. 194. More quoting stupid people. This moron thinks water should fly off the Earth for literally no reason. The fake teacher gives an explanation of water being manipulated by centripetal force, and the idiot says that's totally different because a pail is not a planet. Yeah, it's a different scenario and a different force. Earth doesn't hold things by centripetal force, it's gravity. The point is that objects are subject to forces. Water is subject to the influence of gravity just like any other massive object. 195. More gravity. No, zero astronomers say the magical magnetism of gravity because gravity is not magnetism. They are totally different forces. What an unbelievably stupid thing to say. No, they don't call it magic either. You call it magic because you want to denigrate it and you're too lazy to learn basic physics. An immaculate example of you being too lazy and stupid to learn basic physics is presenting a spinning tennis ball and pretending it should somehow produce a gravitational field that would mimic the Earth's. When it's wet, the water flies off of it. First of all, it stays wet, and that amount of moisture pretty accurately mimics the depths of Earth's oceans. Second, you're spinning it thousands of times faster than the Earth, which spins 1 time in 24 hours. Third, the water falls off the ball and down to the Earth because of the gravitational field of the Earth, the thing you are pretending doesn't exist. Big thing like planet make big gravity. Small thing like ball make small gravity. Common sense is irrelevant and you have none anyway. 196. More quoting stupid people. It's just some moron doing the big scary numbers game in a passage that he clearly lifted word for one of his other proofs. He actually plagiarized this and then included the source he plagiarized and counted it as another proof. Did he think people wouldn't even make it to the end of this? 197. Conspiracy. Yes, there is literally no point to doing this. There is nothing whatsoever to gain by tricking people into thinking the Earth is a different shape. Most people on Earth believe in God. Beyond this, tons of people are creationists, even young Earth creationists, who believe God made everything super special just for them 6,000 years ago. Even those morons look at flat earthers and have a nice big belly laugh. Get over it. Humans aren't the pinnacle of creation, and flat earthers are the most pointless specimens of the bunch. 198. Jews. Dirty, dirty Freemason Illuminati Jews. That is all. 199. More quoting stupid people. This moron thinks it's common sense that the sun moves. Actually, it's common sense that sunrise and sunset prove the Earth is a rotating sphere. I guess some people just have crappy brains. 200. A final word from Sam. Newton was a bonehead. His laws are devoid of reasoning. I don't know, F equals ma makes a lot of sense to me, and anyone who passed 6th grade science class. Fancies and falsehoods, according to the pointless grifting douchebag who spewed nothing but fancies and falsehoods, only to be regurgitated in this modern spacefaring era by another pointless grifting douchebag with better yoga poses. That's progress, I guess. And that's it for Eric Dubé's 200 Flat Earth Proofs, a monument to human stupidity if ever there was one. Honestly, making this video was the first time I'd actually sat down and read every single one of them, and it was even dumber than I expected, which is saying a lot. Thanks for making it through this one. I'll see you next time.